Hey kids, Flexing Teacher Weber here. I hope you're having a good day. We're going to wrap up subtracting mixed numbers now by looking at what happens when we subtract mixed numbers with different denominators. So let's run through a few questions today, and it's a lot of the same themes that we've been working on for a long time now, with just a few little tricks added in. So first question we're going to do 6 2/3. Subtract 3 1/5. And these have different denominators, so I'm going to put an area over here where first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do an estimate of my answer. I'm going to estimate by rounding off my fractions. So 6 2/3, that fraction is really closer to 7 if you're talking about whole numbers. And 3 1/5 is really close to 3. So an estimate for our exact answer is going to be somewhere around 4. Now the exact answer, we need to find the lowest common denominator of 3 and 5. Well, if you can do that by mental math, great. The lowest common denominator is 15. But if you can't, you'll want to have some scrap paper, and you'll want to skip count like we've done many times. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and 5, 10, 15. So the lowest common denominator is 15. So I will write both fractions with their lowest common denominator of 15. And I will now work out my equivalent fractions. 3 times 5 gives 15. So 2 times 5 gives 10. And 5 times 3 gives 15. So 1 times 3 gives 3. And now I study my fractions. I can see that the top fraction is larger than the bottom fraction. So I'm going to subtract my whole numbers. 6 minus 3 is 3. 10 minus 3 is 7 over 15. And 3 and 7 over 15 is pretty close to my estimate of 4. So nothing too earth-shattering about that example. It didn't involve any regrouping or borrowing. So let's do one that has that. So we'll do 3 3/8. Subtract 1 1/2. And over here, I'm going to go to some scrap paper. I'm going to divide my page in half. And on my scrap paper part, I'm going to do an estimate by rounding off. Now, 3 3/8 is almost halfway between 3 and 4, just a little less than halfway. So I think what I'm going to do in this one is I'm going to round it to 3 1/2. And then 1 1/2 I can just keep as 1 1/2. And then for my estimate, well, 3 minus 1 is 2, and 1/2 minus 1/2 is 0. So the estimate here is just 2. Now, next thing I need to do, I need to get my lowest common denominator of 8 and 2. If I can get it by mental math, great. If not, I'm going to go to some scrap paper. I'll start with my lower denominator, and I'm going to skip count by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, the first multiple of 8 is 8, so there's my lowest common denominator. My LCD is equal to 8. Now what you do have to show me is writing both fractions with that lowest common denominator. Okay, well 3 over 8 stays the same. It's already got denominator 8. What do I do to 2 to get 8? Well, I multiply by 4. And I do the same thing to the top, and that's 4 over 8. Now, here's the issue. 3 over 8 is smaller than 4 over 8. Now, I don't like it when people say you can't do 3 minus 4, because 3 minus 4 is negative 1. But we've shown with our estimate that we're going to have an answer of somewhere around positive 2. So it's not that we can't have a negative fraction, it's just that that's not what we're going to have in this answer. So what we're going to do is we're going to borrow 1 whole from the 3, make it 2. We're going to take that 1 whole over to fraction land, but we're not going to write it as 1 whole. We want to add it on to 3/8. So the way we'll write it is we'll write it as 8 over 8. And then we can add it to 3 over 8. 8 over 8 and 3 over 8 is 11 over 8. And now I have a fraction that is large enough to subtract 4 over 8 from. And now I subtract my parts. 2 take away 1 is 1. And 11 over 8 minus 4 over 8 is 7 over 8. And I'm pretty happy with my answer because 1 and 7 over 8 matches my estimate very closely. Let's try another one. 8 and 1/5 subtract 4 and 3 over 4. And once again, I'm going to make an area for scrap paper and an area to do my estimate. Well, 8 and 1/5 is much closer to the whole number 8, so I'll round that off to 8 for my estimate. 4 3/4 is actually halfway between 4 1/2 and 5, but I'm going to round it up to 5 to make a nice easy estimate. So my estimate is that my answer should be somewhere around 3. Okay, now I notice when I go to calculate this that my denominators are different, so I'm going to write down my denominators, but I only need to do this if I can't get the lowest common denominator by mental math. So if I can't get it, I skip count 4, 8, 12, 5, 10, 15, 16, 20. Oh, 20. There's my lowest common denominator. My lowest common denominator is 20. Remember, I don't need to show that. I don't need to show all this work. And in fact, your page will get too messy if you show all that. Do that on scrap paper only if you need to. If you can do it by mental math, great. What you do need to show me is your equivalent fractions. That shows me your math learning there. That shows me a lot of stuff. So I want you to show me that you know 5 times 4 gives 20, so 1 times 4 is 4. 4 times 5 is 20, so 3 times 5 is 15. And then what you see here is that on top, 4 over 20 is smaller than 15 over 20, so we're going to have to borrow and regroup. Well, I'm going to borrow 1 whole from the 8 and make it 7. That 1 whole is going to go for a ride to fraction land. Woo! And I'm going to write that 1 whole not as 4 over 20, but as 20 over 20. Because now I can add that to 4 over 20 and I will get the fraction 24 over 20, which now gives me something that I can subtract 15 over 20 away from. 7 minus 4 is 3. 24 minus 15 is 9 over 20. And that is very close to the estimate of 3. So the estimating helps you calculate your answer or judge whether your answer is reasonable. Okay, let's look at something similar to this now. We've encountered these questions before and we've often solved them by mental math, but we can use this strategy now to solve them, this strategy of borrowing. 6 minus 4 and 5 over 8. Well, the problem with this question is I have nothing to subtract 5 over 8 from. So this is what I can do. I can do that idea of borrowing again. I'm going to borrow 1 whole from the 6 and make it 5. And I'm going to write that 1 whole beside the 6 as a fraction. And I'm going to write that as a fraction 8 over 8. And the reason I'll do that is because now since I have a common denominator of 8, I can subtract the fraction parts. And check this out. I still have 6 here, right? 5 wholes and 8 over 8 is still 6. But now I can subtract these two fractions. 8 over 8 minus 5 over 8 is 3 over 8. And 5 take away 4 is 1. So 1 and 3 over 8. Let's look at one more idea like this. 7 minus 1 1/4. Now, many of us can do this with mental math, but not all of us can. So here's a good strategy to do that. Okay, I have nothing beside the 7, no fraction that I can subtract 1/4 from. So I'm going to borrow from the 7, make it 6. I'm going to take that 1 whole I borrowed, I'm going to write it as the fraction 4/4. The reason I choose 4/4 is because that gives me the common denominator that I need to subtract. Now I subtract. 6 minus 1 is 5. 4 minus 1 is 3/4. So, all of these questions we did give you the ability to do this assignment right here. You were assigned ML 257, 258, numbers 9, number 10, number 11, and number 15. And you need to show all your work. All of these ones will involve finding a lowest common denominator and doing some subtracting. And you'll also have to practice doing some borrowing and regrouping. I hope that helps. Get your homework done. This is just for practice, so we'll answer questions next time. That's all for now. Flexing Teacher Weber, out.